What are some of the great mistakes that people make when they're starting out on their wealth building journey? What are some of the things to know ahead of time so that you can avoid when you are pursuing your wealth building process? We're going to be having a look at some of those in this video today. So let's jump into it. Welcome back to Ira Living Finance. We're going to be looking at 7 key mistakes that people make when they're going on their wealth building journey and how you can avoid these mistakes as you try to grow out your wealth building process. Number 1 is not believing that you control your own financial destiny. And the point here is that whatever your financial destiny is going to be, you are going to be one of the most instrumental people in its realization. And you have the opportunity and the ability to direct the course of how your finances will go. And in order to do so, you need to be in a position where you are educated enough about how money works, and also have an understanding about ways in which you can go about investing, sowing, reaping, growing. If you're going to be a farmer, you need to understand the rudimentaries of farming. And equally, if you're going to build a wealth portfolio, you need to understand the rudimentary of growing wealth over time. Because of course, this is not going to be something that is a sprint. It's going to be a marathon. However, we need to be mindful of how we're directing our path in the decisions that we're making and recognizing that we are the captain of that ship. Number 2 is having no savings or emergency fund. Now, although we're the captain of our ship, we need to also recognize that there are factors that are outside of our control, which will most likely occur. And these are challenges that we will need to figure out how to buffer and how to circumvent. And in order to do so, it's important that we have some savings or emergency fund for times when crisis strikes and we need to address those circumstances really quickly and large amounts of money are needed. Because equally, some of our emergency fund could also be used to support us with our investment as we're doing the investment plan to ensure that we're able to cover some of our costs for a significant period of time. So it's important that we're looking at how we can save and secure an emergency fund for those moments in time when that is actually going to be the essential difference between us being able to acquire a position on our wealth ladder and not being able to move to the next level. Ideally, an emergency fund should have about 3 to 6 months worth of expenditure secured in a high yielding account that you can have access to at any given point in time. Number 3 is not having a retirement plan or portfolio. We are not all going to be able to work beyond our 60s in the same level that we were able to do so in our 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, especially for those people who do labor intensive work. And therefore, it's important that we're thinking about those points in our times when we do not have an employer's income coming into our account. We don't have that paycheck that we're going to be receiving, and thinking about how we're going to live and survive. It's also key to remember that as people age, certain needs for medical attention and additional care becomes increasingly so. And therefore, it's important that we're making those provisions for those needs that we will have in our retirement age. And people who don't consider this early on is putting themselves in a position of a predicament, because the key factor here to think about is if you're investing into a retirement, then the earlier you start, the better it is for you, because time is your friend here, because you can use compounding to help you to build out that investment a lot more, and therefore not needing to put in as much money as you would if you started later. Number 4 is having high levels of consumer debt. Many people like to say that they would want to be in a position to leverage debt. However, to do so successfully, you need to have a high amount of money invested where your return on investment significantly outweigh the amount of money that you are going to be paying in interest. It's important that we remember that debt is a thief. And it is a thief because it requires you to constantly be paying for the past, oftentimes paying far more than it was even worth. So it's important that you're looking at how you can pay down your debt, thereby saving on interest that you're paying and being able to redirect that money in other areas so that you can start to build out an investment fund and figuring out how you can invest it so that you can have a significant return on that investment. Number 5 is overextending. There are people who live their life in such a way that they're constantly living beyond their means. Whenever they figure out that they're going to be having some sort of increase in revenue or a pay boost, what they then do is they upgrade their lifestyle to keep trend with the pay package that they are receiving. And this is a detrimental way in which to manage your finances. People are buying cars and luxury labels at a point in time when those aren't things that they should be focusing on, because those things are liabilities. Instead, what they should be looking at is to see how they can use those monies to invest in ways that are actually going to give them the means to be able to acquire those things if they then so choose. Most people who understand how money works and how to invest and are keen to build wealth and comfortably do so are people who are more likely to have understated wealth in terms of the way in which they appear and the way in which they conduct themselves. Another way in which people allow this overextending to affect their lives is in the position of home buying, where oftentimes people buy houses that they're not yet able to afford, and therefore it makes them house rich and cash poor. And this put exceptional strain on people's finances to keep these possessions in play and not having to fold their hands. Number 6 is people who are acting out of desperation or greed. When people recognize that people are either desperate or that they are greedy, they exploit those behaviors that they recognize because they're conscious of the fact that these people will be in a position where they can influence them in such a way to take advantage, because they are inclined to doing just about anything to become what would appear to be wealthy, rather than to ensure that they are taking their time, understanding each agreement, each proposition, and making sure that the decisions they're making concerning those are wise decisions and are decisions that are being made when all the information are examined, so that they are not putting themselves in positions of compromise. Number 7 is not setting financial goals. Now, financial goals are the statements we make that allows us to turn our vision of wealth building into a mission. And therefore, we need to be mindful of ensuring that these goals that we're going to be setting ourselves are smart. So they are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they have a time frame in which they're going to be achieved. So they are time bound. And so it's important that we examine what it is that we want to do. If your first focus is to clear off debt, then you want to be specific about which debt it is that you're going to work to clear down. So it might be that you decide that you're going to clear off your credit card debt or your overdraft or a higher purchase. Be specific about which one it's going to be. And then make sure that whatever you're going to do from there is going to be measurable. So it might be that you say you're going to pay an additional or an excess on your monthly payment, and then you want to make sure that whatever you do here is going to not just be measurable, but it's going to be achievable. So you want to examine your other expenses to make sure that can happen. So it might be that you decide that you're going to increase those payments by £50 each month. And then in addition to that, you know that that will be achievable and you will not need to go back into debt to be able to survive for the rest of the month. And it's a realistic way that you're going to do that by making sure that you give yourself a time frame in which to do so. So you might say, I have £2,000 that I'm going to be clearing off. And at the moment, I'm going to be increasing my current payment by £50. So therefore I'll be paying £200 per month because of the fact that there will be interest added on to the balance until it's cleared completely. You might give yourself a time frame of a year in which to do so. And therefore you're making this a very smart target that you're setting yourself, or a very smart goal. It is important that we take measures to avoid these financial faux pas if we are going to be able to meet our ambition of wealth building and being able to grow out a portfolio that is going to be sufficient to take us through to some of the aims and the ambitions that we have for ourselves when we decide that we want to take on a wealth building journey. Remember, financial literacy is revolutionary. It has transformed my life, and I believe it can do the same to yours.